My mother's hand didn't shake until the moment she lied about me. We were in the private jet terminal just outside Atlanta, sunlight pouring through the glass. The air smelled like leather and jet fuel. My parents, Marcus and Loretta Coleman, were gliding across the floor beside their biggest client, tech billionaire Damian Price. They looked perfect. They always did. Damian glanced around, impressed. "This is nice," he said. "Very organized." "Oh, we only use the best for our clients," my mother said smoothly. Then he asked a simple question. "Do your kids work with you? I like seeing family legacies." My mother gave a tiny sad laugh, the one she kept for disappointments. "We have a daughter," she said softly, "but she's a disappointment. We gave her everything. She works at an airport now, just a regular job. She never really went anywhere." My father nodded with a practiced look of regret. "She chose that life," he added. "Some children just don't live up to their potential." The champagne flute slipped from my mother's hand. It shattered on the marble floor. Because she had just erased me in front of their client, standing in my terminal. They weren't about to board a random jet. They were about to board a plane from my company. And the truth was standing 10 meters away. "My name is Janelle Coleman. I'm a black woman, 33, and the founder and CEO of Skybridge Elite Aviation, a private jet company outside Atlanta. To my parents, I was never really a daughter. I was a brand asset. Marcus and Loretta run Coleman Image Group, a firm that polishes reputations for rich families. They plan charity events, manage scandals, coach smiles. Growing up, I learned the rules early. Image first, feelings last. When I was 11, I came home from a state STEM fair clutching a blue ribbon. My mother was on our sunny backyard patio under a white canopy, arranging place cards for an outdoor brunch. "Mom, I won," I said, holding out the ribbon. "Did the paper take a picture?" she asked, eyes still on the cards. "I think so." "Good. Bring me the clipping. The Barkers care about education." She straightened my collar, not to hug me, but to make sure I would look good for them. The ribbon wasn't about me. It was social currency. Our family dinners were outdoor performance reviews. On Sundays, we ate on the patio under striped umbrellas while my father treated me like a quarterly report. "Janelle," he'd ask, "how was your last math exam?" "An A." "Acceptable. Not exceptional. Your cousin Malik just graduated top of his class. You should aim higher." My mother would add, "And sit up straight. Mrs. Hart's daughter just joined another board. You should look like you belong in those circles." It was never, "How are you?" Always, "How do you present?" I learned to answer correctly and disappear inside myself. At 17, I asked for a telescope for Christmas. I wanted to look at something beyond our curated life. At the stars. At freedom. Christmas morning, I opened a small velvet box, a diamond necklace. "It's from Olivier & Co., my mother said proudly. "Your classmates will be jealous." Later, walking by my father's home office, I saw the telescope in a corner. He was giving it to a client's son. "It's a better fit," he said. "His father is important to us." I nodded like I understood. I put the necklace in a drawer and never wore it. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a polished extension of their brand. But what saved me started with the sky. When I was 9, my father took me to a client meeting at a small private airfield outside Atlanta. It was a bright, hot day. I sat in the lounge in a stiff white dress, told not to touch anything. Then I heard it, a low, controlled roar. I walked to the window. A small jet sat on the runway, sunlight glinting on its fuselage. 2 black women in uniforms walked around it, doing pre-flight checks. They weren't performing for anyone. They were in control. The engines spooled, the jet rolled, then lifted into the blue Georgia sky. It looked free. That afternoon on the backyard patio, I made a mistake. "I saw a jet today," I said. "I want to fly one someday. I want to be a pilot." My mother laughed lightly, cutting the stems of roses. "Oh, baby, don't be silly. Pilots are just drivers with wings. They're staff. A Coleman doesn't fly the plane. A Coleman owns the plane." My father looked up. "She's right," he said. "You're going to join the firm, manage assets, not drive them." I stared at my plate, cheeks burning. But that night in the late daylight spilling into my room, I couldn't forget that jet climbing into the sky. A spark lit inside me, not just for flying, but for freedom. I protected that spark like a secret. I started buying old aviation magazines with my allowance and hiding them in my closet. Instead of drawing hearts on homework, I sketched wings and cockpits. At 13, I rescued an old flight manual from the school library's discard cart. By the time I learned to drive, I already knew, in theory, how to take a small plane from runway to cruise. My parents noticed my grades. They never noticed the aircraft diagrams in the margins. Years later, I got into a top business school. My father framed the acceptance letter and hung it in his office. At last, he announced at an outdoor client lunch, sun reflecting off glassware, "My daughter is following in my footsteps. Future partner at Coleman Image Group." He rested a heavy hand on my shoulder. It felt less like pride and more like ownership. Their path for me was fixed. Business degree, job at the firm, lifetime of scripted success. I smiled. I nodded. On the first day of registration, under a bright blue sky, I walked into the business building, then crossed the campus and stepped into the School of Aviation and Logistics. I signed up for my required finance classes, then quietly enrolled in aviation management, fleet and route planning, air traffic operations. My parents paid for the degree they understood. I paid for the classes that would set me free. For 4 years, I lived a double academic life. Days in finance lectures, markets, portfolios, corporate stories. I earned the A's my parents needed. Afternoons in aviation rooms flooded with sunlight, safety regulations, fuel planning, maintenance scheduling. I finally felt awake. My favorite professor was Dr. Lionel Grant, a retired airline operations executive. One day after class, he watched me linger. "Coleman," he said, "you're not like the other business kids wandering over here because planes look cool." My stomach tightened. "So why are you stuck in that finance building?" "My parents own a consulting firm," I said quietly. "They expect me to join. That's been the plan my whole life." He looked out the window at the narrow strip of sky. "They're building you a very pretty cage," he said. "But you don't belong trapped in their conference room. You belong out there." He pointed toward the sky. "Don't let them keep you on the ground, kid." Those words changed everything. I took an internship with a daytime cargo operator at the airport. While my parents imagined me at networking lunches, I was learning how to reroute shipments and handle delays. At night, I worked on a secret file, Skybridge Elite Aviation Business Plan. By graduation, I had 2 educations, the finance degree my father framed, and the aviation knowledge and business plan that belonged only to me. The Monday after graduation, my father's assistant called. "Mr. Coleman expects you at the office at 9 a.m., she said. "Your corner office is ready." "I'd rather meet for breakfast," I said. At 10 a.m., under a red patio umbrella at a small roadside cafe, my father sat in a full suit among people in t-shirts and work clothes. "You're late," he snapped. "It's 10:01, I said, sitting. I told him I wasn't coming to the firm, that I'd accepted a job in airport operations with a regional carrier. Day shift, about $38,000 a year. He laughed, bitter. "I pay more than that to keep the backyard trimmed," he said. "I'm offering you $180,000 plus bonuses and a car, and you're throwing it away to chase planes?" "I don't want your job," I said, "or your life." "This isn't about what you want," he hissed. "This is about our name. What do I tell people? That my daughter works at an airport?" "Tell them the truth," I said, "or spin it. You're good at that." His face went cold. "You are an embarrassment," he said quietly. "You're a failure, Janelle, a complete failure." He threw money on the table and walked away, sunlight bouncing off his watch. I sat under that bright umbrella, looking at my plate. I'd feared that word, failure, my whole life. He'd finally said it. I waited for the world to collapse. It didn't. I felt lighter. He'd landed his hardest punch. I was still there, with hot food, hot coffee, and a life I chose waiting for me. I took a bite. The eggs were the best I'd ever tasted. The airport job was hard and loud and real. I learned gate changes, crew rotations, delay management. In the afternoons, I went home to my tiny place near the airport and opened my laptop at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the blinds. Skybridge Elite stopped being theory and became a blueprint. 8 months in, I met Chloe Rivers, a maintenance supervisor. Grease on her sleeve, curls tied back, brain sharp as a blade. She caught me napping in the break room on a binder of regulations. "You the ops girl who fixed that broken schedule grid?" she asked. "I'm just helping out," I said. "Ops who understands numbers," she smirked. "Rare. Why are you sleeping on this busted chair?" "I'm saving money," I admitted, "to start my own private jet company." She laughed, then saw my face. Oh, she said. You're serious. We started meeting under food truck umbrellas outside on our breaks, going over my business plan. She fixed my maintenance assumptions and fuel budgets with real-world knowledge. Eventually, we rented a tiny office over a tire shop. One little window, one desk, 2 folding chairs, a cheap coffee maker. After many rejections, a small community bank on the other side of town finally approved a modest loan. The officer, Miss Daniels, had an Air Force photo on her desk. You really walked away from Coleman money for this? She asked. Yes, ma'am. Then he's a fool, she said, signing. We leased one used jet, secured a small hangar, and named the first plane the Grant. Skybridge Elite Aviation officially took off. 1 jet became 2. 2 became 4. We grew into a fleet of 12 jets and our own bright, efficient terminal. I mailed my parents clippings of our milestones. No reply. Eventually, I stopped sending them. Then came the morning everything collided. I was at the terminal early, sunlight flooding the lobby. We were set to fly Damian Price. Chloe had worked for months to land him as a client. At 8:45 a.m., a black sedan pulled up. My parents stepped out first. They didn't see me. My mother told Damian, we only use the best. Marcus and I vetted this operator. Very precise. When he asked about their kids, she laughed sadly. We have a daughter, she said. But she's a disappointment. She works at an airport, never really went anywhere. My father added, some children just waste opportunity. They were standing in my building under my name, and still chose to erase me. Damian glanced toward the window and saw me. Wait, he said slowly. You're Janelle, right? My parents turned. For the first time in years, we were face to face in daylight. Hello, Mom, Dad, I said. The champagne flute slipped from my mother's hand and shattered on the floor. Damian looked at my logo, at Halo, at me, then at them. You're Janelle Coleman, CEO of Skybridge Elite. He turned to my parents. This is her company. My father tried to recover. Well, we always knew she had a head for business, he said. She gets it from me. We're very proud. Damian's voice stayed calm. With respect, Marcus, I don't think you understand what your daughter has built. I've been following this company for a year. 1 leased plane, 2 employees, long hours at the airport. Now this. He shook his head. She didn't get this from you. She did this despite you. My mother went pale. My father had no words. I didn't need to add anything. Have a safe flight, Mr. Price, I said. I will, he replied. And when I land, let's talk about a long-term contract. I stepped off the jet, out into the sunlight, and watched as it rolled down the runway and lifted into the sky, carrying my parents as passengers. Not owners, not judges, just passengers. Weeks later, Damian signed a 5-year contract with Skybridge. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed across my desk, an email popped up. From Marcus Coleman's subject, Janelle. Your mother and I would like to talk when you're ready, Marcus. 3 days later, I replied, Saturday, 10 a.m., cafe on Ashford. Janelle, a small outdoor place, bright tables, green umbrellas, neutral ground. They were already seated when I arrived. For the first time, they looked old, not polished. We saw the articles, my father said quietly, all of them. I put them in a drawer, my mother whispered. We thought you were throwing your life away, my father said. We thought you were a failure. And now? I asked. Now, he said slowly. We know we were the failures. My mother's eyes filled. I was embarrassed, she said. Not of you, of the fact that you didn't want what I wanted. I twisted that into you rejecting me. When I saw you in that terminal, in full control, I realized you hadn't needed us in a long time, and I was still lying about you. I forgive you, I said. They both stared. I forgave you a long time ago, I continued. Not for you. For me. I couldn't build my company and carry all that anger, so I put it down. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back, I added. If there's any relationship now, it has to be on new terms. No status talk, no branding me, no deciding who I should be, and if it turns toxic again, I'll walk away. Quietly. My father nodded. That's fair, he said. We'll take whatever you're willing to give, my mother said. Even if it's just the occasional text. Don't say that if you don't mean it, I replied, because I'm not bending to fit your image again. I understand, he said. You shouldn't. We finished our coffees under the morning sun. No dramatic hug, just truth. I have a meeting at the hangar, I said, standing. Planes don't wait. Take care of yourself, Janelle, my father said. I already am, I answered, and walked away. That afternoon I stood at the hangar window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight spread across the polished wings of my jets. Chloe came up beside me. Price just added more routes, she said. Looks like we're going to be busy. Good, I said. How was coffee with the ghosts? She asked. Quiet, I said. Honest, they're not fixed, but I am. She smiled. You built this without them, she said, nodding toward the bright hangar. They can watch if they want, but they don't get to claim it. We built this, I said. Yeah, she grinned. But you were the one crazy enough to think we could. She went back to the floor. I stayed by the window. Outside, one of our jets turned toward the runway, engines spinning up, sun flashing off the tail logo. My faint reflection looked back at me in the glass. Not a disappointment, not a prop, not a failure. Just a black woman who tore up the life her parents wrote for her and wrote her own, with hard work, daylight, and the sound of engines roaring into the sky. They called me a failure when I walked away from their plan. Watching my jet lift into the blue, I smiled to myself. If this is failure, then failure flies higher than their approval ever could, and the sky wide, open, and sunlit is finally mine.